Well, I am so excited to be here this morning with Jess Janzen. She is someone I have had the pleasure of meeting in person multiple times. And every time I connect with you, whether it's seeing you on stage or seeing you at a networking thing or just visiting with you, I am filled with light. I think your energy is so inspiring. Your story, you are obviously incredibly passionate, and that comes through in everything you do. And so I'm so excited to spend some time talking to you about aligning our personal and professional selves and how that comes together for goal setting, so that we can achieve things well beyond what we ever thought possible. So as we jump into this, maybe you can just, give a quick Coles Notes on, who you are, what makes you tick, and what you're super passionate about.
That we could be here for a while, but I'll try to keep this tight and concise. So all of the things that I think you would read in a bio. So a mom to 3 kids. I'm a wife to an amazing husband, Hot Ronnie. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker. I'm a coach. I'm an author. I'm, all of those things, and friend, blah, 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 blah. So that's like the general kind of quick Coles Notes. In my bio that we just rewrote, we're like, oh, the word like live wire firecracker, I feel like definitely describes me pretty accurately. What you see online is what you'll see in person, unless I'm utterly exhausted, which there definitely have those days like we all do. But I'm passionate about a charity that we started up in honor of my son that passed away 7 years ago. My husband and I started the Love for Lewison Foundation, which has raised over $2.2 million. And I'm passionate about being on stage and sharing this message about helping people access and become more resilient, as well as learn to bring more joy into their everyday. Our son taught us that lesson. And so I've built my life around this message of how do we bring the joy to the everyday? How do we bring joy in the darkest of circumstances? And I would call myself a professional, and I would deem myself a thought leader and an expert in the topic of joy, because we brought joy in the midst of my son fighting for his life and eventually dying and passing away. And I'm most passionate about sharing this. So I've built and crafted a life around this. It has not been easy. It has been a wild ride, and still is a wild ride where, in summertime, I text my husband. I'm like, I'm quitting. This is all stupid. I'm going back to corporate America. I hate my life. I don't know what I'm doing. And so in all of that, I also love to be really vulnerable and real and show all of the sides of, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's the Coles Notes version of me. And I have a very raspy voice because I've been doing a lot of events, a lot of talking, and not a lot of resting. So if I sound hoarse, I am.
Oh man, I love it. I love that you bring your authentic self to everything you do. Whether it is like, on stage to a room full of 1,000 people, or a candid conversation over, a virtual coffee. I love that. So maybe to start us off in, tying all these amazing things that you're involved in, and if you think about them as all the hats that you wear, there are a lot. How have you managed to align your personal self with your professional self and the goals that connect the two together?
For a long time, I felt like I had to be one person as like the work Jessica, and I think another person as the fun, outrageous, whatever. And I think I always slightly allowed those lines to come together. Like I was maybe the most vocal or the most, out there. But then I felt like I had to kind of pull it back or ensure that other people felt comfortable, because all growing up, I got, oh, you're so much. Oh, don't be too much. Oh, don't be the center of attention. Don't be so bossy. And I mean, thank God Sheryl Sandberg wrote the book, Lean In. And, we're changing the conversation around females that know what they want, are driven and determined, that it's not about them being bossy. It's just about them being leaders that are determined, that are ready to go and are driven. And so in my world now, especially now as I'm building a business and doing the things that I absolutely know I'm called and meant to be in, I stopped fighting what people thought I should be. And I just started stepping into who I am. And I think this is a lifelong battle and practice, but I always say the death of my son was one of the best things that happened to me, because in losing his life, I truly feel like I found mine. Like I was trying to fit into the corporate world, but when I walked into a room, I was too much, or I'd be the one that wanted to high kick, or I wanted to be the one that went whoop whoop, and everyone, we don't do that in corporate America. And I just was like, golly, I wonder if we let people be more of who they actually authentically were, how much happier, how much more joy we'd see in the workplace. We'd see peak performance and we'd see people thrive again. But I think lots of people are spending time fitting into molds. And so as soon as I started to break out of that, and it is a constant battle, I definitely don't feel like I've mastered it. I feel like it is like, it will be a lifelong practice for me to remind myself to be my authentic self and not to worry what others think. But there's been so much freedom in that, and so much abundance. And in that vulnerability, I've had the best connections. And a huge piece of that was, it's okay that I'm not for everybody. It's okay that I might not fit in, or I might not get booked as the speaker for that group, or it's okay that this corporation, I am too much for them, or it isn't the right fit. I'm always like, there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's opportunity for all of us, and we can share in the pie, and I can't do it all anyways. And so that's really brought peace into my life. And again, it is a practice of reminding myself. And the more I just step into what's naturally what I know to be true is me and the best fit for me, the more successful I become, which is a really beautiful thing.
Oh, I love it. There are so many different, angles I want to take this based on what you've just shared. And what's really standing out to me is kind of being able to call out that fear of judgment and really tap into that and think about like, what is, what's driving that? But then also, what could my life be like if I just dispensed of it and actually dug into what are the things that bring me joy, and what are the places I'd like to go if I wasn't afraid of what I thought people would think of me.
Well, I especially think we are living our life, and especially now in the time that we're in, like what I do was not part of what I do didn't exist when I was in high school. No one was like, hey, just so you know, you can grow a career and earn money by showing up on a random box that you're going to hold called an iPhone, film your life, have your own little TV show, and make money at it. Like that wasn't a thing. We weren't even dreaming that. And like, it's hilarious because I was looking back on some high school stuff, and I was most likely to become a motivational speaker, and now I am that, which is so funny because I've always been like the one in front of a crowd, or gathering the groups and, hey, we're going to do this thing. But I think we're so often like, oh, this is the box, oh, these are the things. So then when we don't do it, this is the box, these are the things, this is now my life, because it doesn't make sense to our parents or to our close friends, or maybe to even our partner, because we're like, oh, I don't know the how. That's usually, I think, what holds people back. And so we get into these things of, I'm going to be comfortable. This is comfortable. It's known. Especially when you talk about neuroscience, and our brain is wired to keep us safe. When we do things that are uncomfortable, that aren't predictable, that are out there, your brain's always like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think, thankfully, my brain, I call him Larry. Larry's like, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, Larry, we're fine. We've done these other crazy risks. And Larry's like, oh yeah, that's right. And it always works out. And so now my default setting is like, okay, go try this scary thing. Like you always land on your feet eventually. And you've had a lot of misses, but you're still standing, you're still going. So keep going.
Oh my goodness. We all need that message. I love how you called your inner voice and named him Larry.
Larry. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So, hearing some of the journey, and obviously this is like the quick version of it. So, your son, I have heard you speak a number of times, and know that story, and brings me to tears every single time I hear it. And I know how the story goes, but it still is so emotional. So that was obviously a very pivotal moment for you, in really shifting everything in your life. What are some other pivotal moments that really had you kind of solidify, this is what's important to me, and this is what I'm going to focus my efforts and my whole self on?
Great question. There's a few that are like bubbling up, and just for anyone listening to this conversation, you were going to send me questions in advance. I'm like, don't bother. I'll be better on the fly. I think one of the pivotal moments for me in my life was pursuing my husband. And I write about it in my book, Bring the Joy. Small little plug there. You can buy it on Amazon or on our website. My husband was going through a really hard time, mental health, addiction, a drug overdose. His story's crazy. He should be dead, and he's here. And we were so totally opposite. But I just remember like this nudge, and I wrote a whole book. It's about following the nudges of your heart. You follow the nudges, that's what the joy is. And I think often we deny the nudges, or we don't follow through on the nudges because they're scary, because we don't know the outcome, because it isn't guaranteed. And to go back to that question, I think so many of us are scared to do the thing for fear of judgment from others. And like, you have the nudge, you have the tug, you have the voice, you have Larry, you have God, whatever it is that you associated with, like nudging you forward, but we get scared because we don't know the outcome, or the outcome isn't guaranteed. And a pivotal moment for me was in pursuing my husband. Like, I felt absolute 1000% certain that I was meant to be with him, but it was so not easy and kept coming up against a brick wall. And I'm a person of faith, so I'd be like, God, I am listening to this damn voice, but it isn't working. Like, tell me where I'm going wrong. Like, why am I this convinced I'm supposed to be with this guy, and it's this hard? And I confessed my undying love to my husband 3 times, and all 3 times he was like, super great, but like, we're just friends, and like, I don't feel the same way about you. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And there was like sexual tension, and we'd go on these trips, and I just like wanted to rip his head off, and I wanted to kiss him. And so that was a pivotal moment in my life of following through on a nudge that forever changed the trajectory. I think you can be married to anybody. And some people are like, I believe in soulmates. I don't believe in soulmates. I do believe in soulmates. I think I definitely found them. But I could have married my ex-boyfriend, Jeff Dayton, and we could have had a great and full marriage and all of that. I could have married my Spanish lover, who I talk about in my book, Carlos, and we could have started a whitewater rafting adventure company and lived in Costa Rica 6 months and here and all. You can marry anyone. Everything is just a decision. There's one decision away from making it work or not making it work. Like, it's like marriage is hard. Well, it's like divorce is hard. It's like being a parent is hard. And it's like not being a parent is hard. And it's just about choosing your hard. So that moment with my husband was pivotal. And I'd rewind to the move here to Calgary, pivotal in my life. Young, single, and able, $300 in my bank account, like risking it all, not having a guaranteed outcome, didn't have a job, just had a place to stay with friends. I put my first and last month's rent on like my freaking line of credit, like dumb. But like, I just rolled up my sleeves and I took a chance on something. And I was like, the worst that happens is you go back home and you live with your parents again. Like, I think at some point we've all had to move back in with our parents, like whether it's a renovation or, you know, your footing gets a little bit jiggled. But that moved to Calgary. And then again, in my book, I expand on this, but I talk about meeting these 2 kids with spinal muscular atrophy in 2007. And that's the disease that 9 years later, my own son would get diagnosed with. And I had never been thankful for my legs and my arms in a way that I wanted to honor my body. And I just like had taken so much for granted until I had met these 2 kids living with this rare genetic disease. And that was pivotal in me being like, I'm okay to park at the edge of the parking lot and walk a little bit further. I'm okay to take the stairs and not take the elevator. I'm okay that my voice is loud. What a blessing. People would give anything to have the body and the abilities that I do. And so I would say those in the last 20 years have been the most pivotal moments in my life of some big shifts and changes. And obviously becoming a mom and losing my son, there's lots, but those ones definitely stand out for me.
Oh, wow. Those are raw. I guess I'm listening and I'm thinking, ooh. Wow. So, you know, your journey kind of highlights so many different paths you could have taken. You know, you have landed where you are. What do you think are some of the things that have contributed to your success along this journey?
I was like, stupidity. I mean, honestly, as an entrepreneur, you're like, cool, my bank account's at minus $8. Great. I mean, you're just like being a little bit naive, probably. But I think in all seriousness, if I boil it down to, it has been a stick-to-itiveness, which is an actual word. Don't ask me how to spell it, but would be a stick-to-itiveness and a deep belief that anything is possible. And that is because I've had amazing people pour into my life and the incredible gift of community. Where like when I wanted to quit, which I think a lot of people get to the point where you want to quit. And I've had people be like, no, no, no. Oh, you're not like quitting now. A good friend of mine, her name's Ashley, you know, when I need a slap across the face or like a, you know, reset, I'll call her. And I was in software sales, and honestly, it's a struggle. My accountant, you know, sends over my monthly P&L and they're like, oh, your P&L, like you've seen a massive decline in revenue for the last 2 months. And that's because we're fully focused on our fundraiser. And so my personal business, you know, doesn't do as well and isn't thriving. And I was like, oh, I just don't know if this makes sense, if I can keep going. Like, it's just too hard. She's like, Jess, what if you're just like 3 more emails away? What if you're just like 3 more speaking events from like getting to a spot that like it really, really works? Like, are you willing to be this close, have put in this many years of work and just tap out because you're having some hard months? And that conversation got me back on track. And that's been a North Star for me the last few months of like, what if I am just a few more emails away from finding, you know, a rhythm and a flow where it's like, oh, this is working. Oh, this is what we've been working on and expanding. And so a stick-to-itiveness, a deep belief, and work ethic that both my parents have taught us growing up on a farm just outside of Winnipeg, where you didn't just stop work. You didn't just like, oh, it's 5 o'clock, my day's done now, like protect my boundaries. It was seeing my mom and dad fight through really tough years, seeing my dad take on a second job, you know, trucking in the winters because we had some bad farm years, seeing those sacrifices. And it didn't mean that my dad wasn't a great farmer. It just meant that there were some tough years. And I think too, when I'm going to take on this job, and is it my dream thing? No, but this is what I'm going to do to pay the bills and make it work and go through that. And I don't think we talk enough about that as business owners. And we just think that it should be all of this glitz and glam and look at me, 7 figures. And, you know, you see all of the highlight reels, and especially the buzz on social media can be really deterring. And no one's showing, hey, my bank account's in overdraft for minus, you know, $8,000. And I have no idea if I'm going to get a job in time to pay my mortgage. Like, people don't share that stuff very often because it is real and raw and uncomfortable. And so those things have served me really well, that have kept me going and where I need to be.
You know, that whole concept, we hear the word grit often in, you know, kind of different speaking presentations and whatnot, but I think there really is something to that. And if I just reflect on the number of conversations I have with business owners, you know, who will reach out and say, you know, I just like, I'm not sure what I need, but I know I need something, and kind of struggling with the, like, should I just throw in the towel? And the interesting kind of beauty that comes from being able to share in that vulnerable conversation with a trusted person, whether it's a friend, a coach, an advisor, like whatever, and being able to talk through to really understand, like, well, what is your big vision? And are you on the path to get there? You know, and often I'll hear, you know, business owners talk about, well, I'm in this because, yeah, I love my craft and I love my trade, whether, you know, they're lawyers or accountants or architects or electricians or whatever. But being an entrepreneur and running a business is tough. There are so many other things that, you know, get in the way that have to be done, but they're not kind of what got us there and sparked our fire in the first place, right? You know, and so being able to talk through and say, okay, like, what is your North Star and where are you on that journey? And, you know, what is this all in pursuit of? And most people have a bigger, you know, and that's where the legacy piece comes in, that there's something bigger that is calling them towards this path versus, you know, like if I take a lawyer, you know, versus shutting down their own shop and going to be general counsel for somebody else where there are no risks, there's a guaranteed paycheck and, you know, shorter hours and, you know, no headache on all the other stuff. But when you sift through that, there's usually a bigger reason. It's like, well, you know, you clearly have something bigger that you're seeking. And so, I mean, no one can make that decision but you on whether you want to throw in the towel or not. But I love how it was, you know, someone that just, you had to talk it out, talk it through, and reminded you.
And I think you mentioned it, like having a coach, having, you know, a community, and having other people that are in your corner. And a huge part of that is like, you may be the best lawyer or the best architect. I mean, be the best speaker, but running a business is a whole nother level of like accounting and bookkeeping and cash flow and profitability. And then all of the other things tied into it. And I would say, I'm a good business owner, but I'm an awesome speaker. So now it's like, okay, getting aces in their places to help you succeed, because it's okay. I don't have to be good at everything. And some things are just really overwhelming and not my jam. So I hire a bookkeeper. You implore the important people, and having a coach to call you. I just look at, like, you look at any NFL team. There's no NFL team that doesn't have a coach. And then they have, like, the defensive coach and the offensive coach and the special kicker coach. Like, I mean, you've got it all. And those are the teams that are, constantly, that's what a coach does. It helps you call out where you may be lacking or where there's moments to improve. And so I just think it's so important to get a team together when you start a business. And at the beginning, you don't just have, typically the ability to be like, I'm hiring all these people and it's just great, because you have to start it. But when you level up and start to get to those areas, that's when it's like, focus on your craft and what you're good at, and then start to bring on people that can support you in your legacy building journey.
Oh, so true. One of the next questions I was going to ask is, how have you adapted kind of your style as an entrepreneur and running your business as you continue to grow and evolve? So, clearly you've brought on people who specialize, both in terms of coaching you, and I know we've talked about this before offline about, you've got a speaking coach. It sounds like you've got, experts in a bunch of different areas. Tell me about kind of this evolution of, going from kind of I'm going down this path, but I'm here by myself, to then feeling like, okay, I've got a team of people that are rallying behind me, that allow me to just sink into the stuff I love and that I'm good at, and, delegate and trust the rest to other experts.
Totally. I have 3 businesses, and for simplicity's sake, I would say the easiest is 2. So, and I mean, the charity is not a business, but you have to run it like a business. It has to be profitable. It makes sense. We've been really fortunate with our charity Love for Lewiston to be able to have some of, I would call them, the world's best first class volunteers. And in a charity world, that is really important and critical to make your operating costs and your budget and everything align, and super important that way. And so we've found the people that are at the best in what they do. And one of the things that I've learned, especially in that business, is I might want to do it differently, but if I have a lead who's giving and serving of their time, I have to trust. And especially as I've learned this with myself, living with ADHD, my approach might not make sense to other people, but if it's the way that my brain functions and will get there the best, then I have to go that path, and I let people know. And so with our foundation, it's like allowing people, I might do it differently, but if that's how it works and functions for them, I'm going to trust them, and I'm going to ask the questions and make sure it's the best thing, overall. But allowing people to succeed in their area of genius is really, really important. And then knowing also too, when we have to start paying people for their services, it's a challenge in a foundation. But when you have a contract in place with clear deliverables, then you can get the best out of your partner, or out of, that contract and in that exchange. And that's the same in my world and in my business. And so I did it all. And, it was everything from, you're tackling everything to being, okay, now I think I need a virtual assistant. I was falling behind. I was missing deadlines. I was letting clients down. And you're like, oh man, can I really afford it? No, but you're on that tipping point of like, but I can't afford not to. And so for my business, really being strategic was like, okay, where are the areas that are suffering the most, or where I seem to be struggling or getting blocked? And then I started ticking away at that. And first it was bringing on a virtual assistant. And the way I found my virtual assistant is she followed up with me 10 times. Like I was like, I'll let you know in a week. And then I wouldn't say anything. And the next day at that exact week mark, she's like, hey, Jess, haven't heard from you. You said you'd let me know by the end of this week. And eventually I was like, oh my gosh, this is the person that gets me and that will cover the gaps where I seem to be lacking. And I just recently brought on my sister-in-law as a team member, and I don't know how I did it up until this point without her, but also we're like leveling up in the business. And so, from capturing all of these things that I just am not good at, that I don't think about, that, she is an expert in, and it's finding people that are passionate about the message and about what you're doing. Because when you find those people, they just care that much more and bring a different level to what you're trying to build. And she has helped me recraft, redo my keynote. And she has brought in so many different levels of expertise and a fresh set of eyes. And she deeply cares about the work that we're doing and that it has meaning. And so finding those people that believe in the end goal and believe in the mission, and then saying, okay, this is where I suck. And I know I need someone to help me in this area. And that's been pivotal. Very scary as a business owner, because you're like, I'm not really ready for it. But if you don't do it, I won't be able to grow to the next level. And because of my deep-seated belief, like, yes, this is possible. Yes, we're going to get there. Every time I've made an investment, the return on investment comes back tenfold so that you can keep going.
Oh my goodness, that resonates 500% with me. I think I've gone through a very similar journey of bringing on people. One of the things I've done recently, so I have some virtual assistants that do very specific things, but have brought on something called an OBM, an online business manager, which, essentially is like an executive assistant, but that can fill in the gaps, but also then help, even with some, kind of each step on the service delivery, depending on what type of business you're in. But I've totally felt the same thing where I'm like, oh, you know what, is this an expense that I'm willing to take on, and how much more business do I need to generate, to offset that? But then thinking, okay, if I'm happy where I am right now, and this is this is where I want to stay, then I stay status quo. But if I want to get here and I know I can get here, then I have to invest in myself and in other people. So looking, I'm hearing you say finding people that resonate with your mission. I absolutely love that. Do you have, a set of values that kind of you live by, and that you look to say, okay, when I'm bringing on people, are they aligned on, these things, and, passionate about what I'm passionate about?
You need to believe in me and believe that I'm the best person possible. And I think that's why everybody that I brought on is contract. I don't have employees, everyone's on contract right now. And that's just the way that it's worked for me. But nobody has just been like, oh, I'm just trying to get a contract, or I'm just outsourcing social media. And especially because my brand is so personal. And a couple of years ago, I tried to employ an agency, and they actually said no to me. They're like, we can't take you on. You're just too personal. Your brand is too personal. What you're doing is too personal. And so it was a good lesson for me. I felt a little bit rejected at the time, but I want people to deeply believe in me. Like, oh, what you're doing matters. How you show up matters. Like, we love what you're doing. Because if someone's just like, yeah, like I have this client and they, create whatever baby clothes, and you're like, you have to believe like this is the best baby clothes manufacturer ever. And for me, I really feel that my team is like, Jess, like you have a message to share. It's so important. What you're doing matters. And we want to help make it happen. And for me, I've never formally branded myself. I literally chose a font on the cover of my book. It's called Wilderness, and that's like my logo. We were talking about this on the phone. Yeah. Like, I've never sat down and done my mission statement or done my vision, because not that I became an entrepreneur by accident, but the life that I'm building and living has just been a series of following the nudges. And it wasn't this strategic, like, I'm going to have this consulting company, or I'm going to do like, we do a bunch of different things. And so it is like way outrageous and all over the place. But I've had these values of like flexibility, freedom, joy, health, and wellness. And those are the things that encompass what's most important to me. So bringing on team members that also value those things especially like the health and wellness part, especially like that joy piece. It's like, I want people that like want to have a joyful life, that love what they do. And that's helped me make strategic decisions that benefit the business.
Oh, yeah, every value you shared, it's so clear in seeing you, and getting to know you. Like, those are just so authentically who you are. I love that. So one of the things that, uh, many of the different kind of offerings that you have from a business perspective is coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about, the type of coach, like what someone would come to you for. And then, like thinking kind of long term, connecting for those clients, the personal and professional, and bringing those into one piece. Like, what are some of the common challenges that those clients of yours, the people that you work with, that they face? And do they know that when they come to you and say, hey, Jess, like, here's my conundrum, here's my pain point, help me walk this journey and figure it out?
Mm-hmm. The coaching kind of happened a little bit by accident. So I had started a mastermind with a really good friend, and she's also like a distantly related cousin. And I just loved working with women specifically on like problem solving and like leveling up. How do we make this better? And that's how my brain is always working. And it's always easier when you're doing somebody else's business and not your own. So let me be abundantly clear. But then there was this like, oh, I have some questions. Oh, could we connect? And I was like, oh, like I'm really good at this and I really enjoy it. Like this is something that it fits within what I'm doing. So a typical client often comes with like, sometimes they don't even know the specific problem. I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split right now with clients of like, I have a specific problem, I'm trying to get up here. And then some people are like, I just feel like stuck and things are kind of stagnating and I just need some help. And why coaching is so powerful is because we can externally process what's usually going on between our two earlobes. For me, what's going on with Larry, the bing, 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 and then verbalizing it, and then having someone look at your problem or where you're stuck from a different perspective and asking some critical questions. And especially as business owners, we're often so busy, our schedules are so stacked that we don't just be like, you know what, I'm going to take the next hour or two and just sit here with this problem and ask myself some critical questions. No one's doing that. No one's doing that. Because if you like have time to sit, you're like, next, call the client back, forgot to send the email, get this over to print. I got to, film this, rebook that schedule. Like, no. And so what I found so powerful is in meeting with business owners, I have a few executive women that like, they don't want to talk to people in the organization. They want to remove perspective. They want a safe place, but they want someone that they can externally process and then help them look at the situation with a fresh set of eyes, a different lens. I always talk about the art of the perspective shift. And then they want something that they can like walk out a few different scenarios, because then when you start saying it out loud and you're like working through it, you're like, oh my gosh. And I always tell people, I'm like, I don't have the answers. You have the answers. But what I'm really good at is helping you know, believe, and trust that you have the answers. That's the difference. And, my favorite is clients, towards the end of a session, be like, oh, right. Yeah, no, I knew it. I knew that. Just didn't trust myself there. And so it's helping clients like discover the belief, discover the trust, get them to look at things differently and not to see everything so negative. So, hey, how can this benefit me? How can this serve me? One of the biggest lessons I teach anyone who I coach is, let's tackle this with a lens of curiosity. Not judgment, not beating ourselves up, not wasting any time that way, but let's tackle this with a lens of curiosity. And every time someone now runs into a situation, they're like, I'm looking out with the lens of curiosity. Okay, like how can this serve me? What can I learn from this? How can this make us better? And that's the fun part about working with women in business and executive women who have big goals, big dreams, want to level up, but maybe have been spinning their tires for a bit and they're not moving to that next level or that next goal that they have. And that's the magic part of it. And with coaching, I think it's both personal and business, because when you're an entrepreneur and when your home life is good, your business life is usually good. When your business life is a mess, your home life can be a mess. So I think when you can start to find that flow, and not that I'm saying both things are perfect, but just when you start to find that flow and understand those rhythms, that's where you'll start to see that cadence. And that's when I see clients leveling up.
Oh, yes, yeah, I totally hear that. So it really sounds like self-discovery is a
Mhm.
key piece to your journey. What you bring, I know certainly in, the speaking that you do, around the message of, bring joy to every day, even the tough stuff in your life. How do you see self-discovery as being a critical part of kind of sorting through where we want to get to personally, where we want to get to professionally, and where are they aligned, where might there be friction that we need to work through, to ultimately get to the next level? Yeah, tell
How
me a
would,
little bit about your thoughts.
how would you define self-discovery? I think I don't know, like, I hear the word growth, but how would you define self-discovery?
Yeah, the way I am thinking of this is personal, intentional time to sit with your thoughts and your feelings.
Mm, mhm.
And I think that lens of curiosity of, um, why do I find this so offensive? Or, why am I afraid to step into something that I know, is part of my bigger picture? Or, something that's, this nudge that I've been hearing, what's holding me back from taking that next first step? And I am a big believer in what is the next first step to
Mhm.
move you down the path, right? Like, we don't need to have all 100 steps figured out and need to get to step 100, but what's the next thing we can do to move us in that direction? And I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits, but kind of that concept of, like, the little incremental pieces that we can take on day by day. And you look back and it's like, wow, we've really accomplished a lot that we didn't even think was possible, but we also weren't thinking about climbing the entire mountain. We were just looking at, getting up to this first little hill.
Totally. And James Clear says it best. He's like, small habits lead to big change. But I think we all just want the change. You just want to lose the 50 pounds. You just want to, have a better marriage. You just want to, like, get more clients coming in on a regular basis. But we often get so stuck on the end result and how far away it seems that then the first step, you just don't even think about how simple it is. Like, what if I just sent one scary email a day? That's like, takes me, 15 minutes out of my day to read, to draft, and just start making those steps. Instead, you're just like, I'm never going to get to that spot where I can have this many speaking gigs, or I'm never going to get to that spot where agencies want to work with me. And you're just like, oh, I've reached out to a couple and they've said no, so it just must mean. And we often make it mean something. I think with this self-discovery piece, it comes back to, often as small business owners, as entrepreneurs, even in business, the end goal of, like, I want this position, I want this goal in my business of revenue, we claim it, but then it feels impossible. And because we don't know all of, you said it exactly, because we don't know all of the steps, or we don't know the how, that's where we get stuck. And I think that's where it takes having a coach, it takes having a community, and it takes having some strategic time in your business to stop working in it and to take time to work on it. And I'm so guilty of this, especially in our foundation's busy season. I often don't work on my business. I'm just working in it, getting the deadlines done, doing the things. But one thing that strategically changed for me, I can't say enough about coaching. Get a speaking coach, get a business coach, and I have a therapist too. I have a therapist helping me deal with all of the past and, that mumble jumble too. I think there's, valid reasons for both. But I would say a critical piece for me that I changed, that I think anyone can apply, is I work what's called a 3-in-1. So I work in my business 3 weeks on, and the last week of every month I reserve to work on my business. I don't take client meetings. I don't take coaching clients. And this allows me time and space to get all the stuff that always gets put off, or it doesn't, I don't make time for, it gets pushed to the sideline or whatever. And it also uses time just to, like, reset. So you're not just like grinding in the week. And I think if we could start building our schedules like that, like, I have built in buffer for life to happen. And I was taught this during COVID. I was in a mastermind group with a bunch of business leaders. I always say this was like a $6,000 lesson for me to learn, but my kids kept getting sick. This is like pandemic, and your kids are like, they go to school, then they're home, and then they get better. And then, and you're just be like, ah! And I was like, I'm so overscheduled that there's no room in my life for buffer. I think if we could build in a bit more buffer, if we could build in some of those blocks of, getting creative, of oh, I can have lunch and connect with a friend, and almost put in a little bit more time in your schedule for play and for fun. I think that's really what helps people move the needle in their business. But we often are just go, 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 that we forget to slow down, and we forget to just like have deep and meaningful conversations, get connected, like have a phone call with someone you haven't had in years. And those are the things that have really helped in my business. And again, it's still a work in practice because I do overschedule. I'm like, oh, just put in there, I'll just take a client in here. And you have to remind yourself, slow down, like this is going to be okay.
Oh my goodness. The whole concept of a buffer, I think, is really, really neat. So I always look at things from the lens of, what are my priorities? And I look at, every 90-day cycle. And, in the
Yeah.
corporate world, we call it quarters. But in life, there's a lot of science behind. Our brains can really focus and commit to something for 90 days. But after 90 days, we get distracted, we lose interest, our motivation wanes. And so, thinking about what are the 1 to 3 things that you really want to focus on in the next 90 days, and then doing a reset, adjudicating, okay, well, how did I do? Did I hit what I deemed as the finish line? And then what's the next 90 days? So I love your concept of 3 in 1. I've been a big fan of, time blocking, but bigger chunks. Like I have certain days every week that I just block off so people can't book meetings into my calendar, because those are the days that I am working on my business. And, this whole concept of, oh, we should be multitaskers. And especially as women, oh, we should be, you should be able to, get all the kids' logistics and this stuff done, and, life and domestic stuff and business stuff and personal development stuff. And, I've really, maybe it's an age thing, but have come to the point where I'm like, there's actually so much more value in saying, no, I'm going to focus on one thing. Like in the next hour, I'm going to focus on one thing, and I'm not going to respond to emails, and I'm not going to respond to texts, or anything else that comes in, but then also over a longer period of time, really simplifying, and I love that concept of a buffer. And I think we can so often feel this need to just add in more, add in more, add in more. And we're not serving ourselves. We're not serving our clients or our family or all the other peripheral people. In our lives. Well, hey, I know we're coming to the close. Any final thoughts or advice that stands out to you from our conversation today that you just really want to make sure people hear?
I love that you're talking about legacy. I think it's really easy to just get into the grind of life, pay the bills, show up to the work, do the things, book the kids in that. And as I mentioned earlier, I've had a very significant life lesson of, and I do believe it was a gift. The doctors came to us and said, your son has this disease. We don't think he'll make the year, like plan and do all the things that you can, like bucket list items. And, there's the song by Tim McGraw, like live like you're dying. And like, you ride the bull, you go skydiving, you do all the crazy things. But I think when you start to get real, and many people have had these, health scares or a contract given to them that is life-changing, I just encourage you, wherever you're at, to slow down and be like, am I living a life I truly love? And am I leaving a legacy? And you can determine what the legacy looks like for you. Is it generational wealth? Is it, setting up your family for success? Is it, having impact in our healthcare world and system? Is it just focusing on raising your kids to be amazing human beings that are going to be incredible contributors to society? Everyone's legacy can look different. I don't think we should all have the same legacy, but I just get clear, because then when you know what your legacy is about, it really helps you go, when you have day-to-day decisions and those really big life-changing decisions. Should we invest in this business? Should I quit my job? Should we, move across the country, whatever it is? When you think about the legacy, then you have something to measure it up against and go, yeah, this is in alignment with our core values. Yeah, this is in alignment with, like, I talk a lot about life by design. Like, this is the life by design that we're building. Like, it does make sense. And then sometimes it's like, actually it doesn't. And I just encourage you, sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. but you're doing them because of the long-term investment. So I think there's an immediate, yes, this makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense. And I think there's those long terms. And I just would encourage you to keep going and approach things with a stick-to-itiveness, because what I have learned in the last, 7 or 8 years of running our business and our charity is that it never is in the timeline that I want it to be. And just because it hasn't been in the timeline doesn't mean that you're not successful or that it's not meant to happen. And so keep going. It will be worth it. It is worth it. And it makes a difference. And if you can press into that belief, watch the goodness unfold.
Oh, oh my goodness. I can't thank you enough for taking this time to chat and share and share your energy. I love it. I could just talk for hours, but I know we have time and we have life and we have other things.
We're time blocking. Yeah.
We are time blocking.
Yeah.
We have the next hour committed to something. Thank you so much. We will include links to all of your stuff, and including your book and ways people can reach out to you and connect. I do not doubt that so many things that you've shared today will resonate with a bunch of people. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. If anyone has questions, I'm an open book, and you can check me out on social media or send an email, but I'm always happy to connect, and grateful for you for trusting me to share this message and to have this conversation. I hope it sparks something in your listeners, viewers, wherever they're seeing this, just to approach life a little bit differently. Because when you start doing that, you really start making sense of life. And I always say, like, if my time comes and I go out tomorrow, I can go out with peace, not being like, oh, I wish I would have done this. Oh, that's how I hope other people can live, because that brings so much internal peace that it's a beautiful thing to put your head down at the end of the pillow and go, oh man, we did it. We did good today. That was fun. That was filled with joy.
Totally. 100%. Love it. Thank you so much.